há erros que foram cometidos.
Mistakes were made and some political commitments were not adopted. I receive these criticisms with humility because, like all of us, I have shortcomings and made mistakes.
A contrite and at times defiant Dilma Rousseff testifies before the Brazilian Senate in efforts to stave off impeachment. Hello, I'm Nathan King, sitting in for Anna Naidu, and this is The Heat. I did not commit the crimes of which I am unfairly and arbitrarily accused, she said, while denying she illegally manipulated the budget to hide deficits. To Dilma Rousseff, the spectacle of an impeachment trial now in its fourth day is nothing more than an attempted coup d'etat. And while she stands accused of crimes against the state, many of those behind the impeachment, including Interim President Michel Temer, have themselves been accused of corruption. Later, we'll talk with several experts about what Rousseff's expected impeachment means for Brazil and, of course, beyond. But we begin with CCTV's Paulo Cabral in the country's capital of Brasilia, who is burning the midnight oil, I can tell you. And Paulo, take us inside the Brazilian Senate as President Rousseff testified on Monday. What was it like? Must have been a lot of energy. And did she change any minds and save her presidency?
Well, look, I can tell you that the appearance of President Rousseff in the Parliament and the Senate was possibly the most anticipated moment in those final stages of the impeachment process, possibly even more than the votes itself, because since the Senate decided to try President Rousseff in May and then she was suspended, there's never been much doubt here in Brazil that she was heading for a defeat, and this is still the perception that she's going to be defeated in this impeachment vote. But now, what nobody knew was, first, if Dilma Rousseff would be coming in person to the Senate to offer her defense, or if you just send a lawyer, and what would be the atmosphere there. So, yes, she did come, and then there were speculations as to what would be a confrontation between a president with a strong personality like Dilma Rousseff and the senators that wanted her out of power. In the end, it was tense, of course, but the atmosphere remained respectful in the question and answer. Dilma Rousseff spoke for 15 hours after her initial statement. And look, both allies of Dilma Rousseff and even independent commentators have been saying that it was one of her best speeches so far. She's not known for being a great speaker, but she was quite clear and confident and defiant when delivering that speech. But regardless of all this, it's not been seen as something that would really change anything regarding the outcome. Actually, the allies of Rousseff are now fighting for 1 or 2 votes, something just to look a bit better, but there's not much hope that anything can change significantly in these last moments.
So, Paulo, what happens after this chapter is closed, after Wednesday's vote, assuming Rousseff is removed? Does Michel Temer then take over? And how long before new elections as well?
Well, and you've seen all the twists and turns over in Brazil over the last months, the impeachment process, Lula and all that. So it's quite hard here in Brazil to say what comes next. You know, a lot of unpredictability. But what you can say is that then, yes, Michel Temer, the interim president, is likely to be confirmed as the president until the 2018 elections. That's how long Dilma Rousseff's term should last. The question now is whether this impeachment will be enough to sort Brazil's deep political crisis. It's not going to be an easy task for Michel Temer anyway. You know, he managed to gather a quite strong support base to get the impeachment passed, but now there is question on how much the support base will really support his government. If you talk to the Rousseff supporters, to many people in Brazil's left-wing camp, they say that will make everything to make it harder for Michel Temer. And you know, there is also the car wash corruption probe that's still going here in Brazil, and it actually got quite close to interim President Michel Temer in past months. So it's another of the unknowns here in Brazil, is how much the car wash corruption probe could also hit this government that is about to be installed.
Thanks, Paulo. You've got a lot more work to do. You're not going to bed, I can tell. That's CCTV's Paulo Cabral reporting from Brasilia. So we've got a lot to unpack here. Let me introduce of course, our panel. First of all, joining us from Sao Paulo to talk about all this is Maria Ermina Almeida. She is a former political science professor and dean of the University of Sao Paulo's Institute of International Relations. Rafael Saleh is a director of Brazil operations for Southern Pulse, a strategic advisory firm. He joins us from Rio de Janeiro. And with us here in Washington is Joel Velasco. He focuses on Latin America as a senior vice president with the Albright Stonebridge Group, an international strategic consulting firm. And joining us from Berkeley, California, is Maria Luisa Mendonca. She teaches at the University of Rio de Janeiro and is the director of Brazil's Network for Social Justice and Human Rights. Let's start there with you, Maria Luisa. You know, there's a trial going on for the accused crime of a crime of responsibility, which sounds a little bit complicated, but even Dilma Rousseff's accusers say basically she's on trial because of what's been happening to Brazil economically as well. Do you agree with that?
Yes, exactly. She did not commit any crime. She was very clear. Her lawyers were very clear. And everybody knows, the opposition senators know that what they are doing is a parliamentary coup. Everybody knows this is very clear now. There is no charges against her. The public prosecutor in Brazil already cleared President Dilma Rousseff of all charges. And in a presidential system, you cannot impeach a president just because there is an economic crisis or just because you don't like the president. That's why this is a coup. And I think it was very important that she gave this speech yesterday. She was very clear, and I think history will show that this is a parliamentary coup, and this is a threat to democracy. If the impeachment is approved, it's what is going to be defeated is not Dilma Rousseff. She's going to be clear. Her history is very clear. I think that we're going to see a defeat of democracy in Brazil. And the senators in favor of the impeachment will have to pay a very strong price to history, because they would be known as the ones that supported a parliamentary coup in Brazil against a democracy.
Okay, let's go to Rafael in Rio, another Brazilian voice here. We just heard Maria Luisa say it's definitely a coup. Is it a rule of law? Is it politics? Or is it payback for the biggest recession we've seen in decades in Brazil?
It's definitely politics and payback at the same time. The question of did she commit a crime of responsibility, the answer to that question is a famous answer that every law student goes through on their first day of school, which is it depends. And in this case, it depends on which side you're on. Both sides can argue whether she committed a crime of responsibility or not. The question that remains is that this is an institutional process that depends on politics. And without the recession that Brazil was going through, it would be politically inviable to depose Dilma Rousseff. The recession allowed the opposition garner enough popular support, or actually to be more precise, for Dilma to lose enough popular support that the opposition could comfortably go after her. That being said, it's also in small terms payback for how Dilma treated other politicians during her 5 to 6 years in office. So it's a mixture of all things. But I would like to comment that while Brazilian democracy is not itself at risk here, we will have elections in 2018. We will have elections on the first weekend of October. What is at risk here is the level of political instability in Brazil, where any other president in the future can be deposed following Dilma Rousseff's example as soon as he or she loses enough political support and the country is in enough of a economic hole. Right. This is setting an example for the future that not only politicians but citizens and markets should pay attention to.
Let's go to Maria Ermina in Sao Paulo. Temer's coming in the next 24 hours, it looks like. Even though he was vice president under Rousseff, very much more right-wing. He's already talked about austerity, cut the number of ministries, going to redistribute the budget. This is a very big change. Is this something that Brazil is ready for?
Yes, I think. I think that there are fiscal constraints, and fiscal adjustment is a must here now in Brazil. The issue in the next months will be what kind of adjustment, what kind of economic adjustment will be put in place. And then there's a lot of discussion, who will pay the price for the adjustment. And then I think the different forces will press to try to protect what they have. But I think that some kind of economic adjustment will be necessary, and well, Dilma Rousseff knew that and tried to do it in the first part of her government in fact, 2015.
That's right. In fact, Joel, I want to bring you in here because she did actually cut taxes for businesses, stuff like that, something she says regretting, as well as appointing Temer, her vice president. What's he got to do, though? Because obviously we're seeing the economy 3.3% expected to contract this year. It was a bit more last year. And he's jumping on a plane as soon as he gets sworn in, we were just saying before the show, to Hangzhou for the G20.
Absolutely.
So he's really going to be in center stage here.
Yeah, he's going to be on center stage, and he needs to help rebuild this country. Whether he believes, whether we believe that he came to power in democratic means or not, my view is that part of democracy is part of the impeachment, and the impeachment is very much a political process. Most likely, within the next 24 hours, he'll have more than 2/3 of the vote.
But does he have a mandate?
Well,
because it is a political process, not an electoral one, as Brazil has.
He's made it clear he's not running for re-election.
Well, he may not be able to because of corruption, right?
Question. But he's not running, and he's got about 18 months, really more like 12 months, to straighten out the economy. And the first thing he's going to try to do is rein in government spending. You know, where he's going to try to reduce the amount of money that is going from that's earmarked already to certain spending that the government can't afford anymore. And he's also going to try to contain the growth of government spending. Those are going to be bitter pills. But if he can do that, and as he gets to the G20, build international consensus, build investor sentiment for investing in Brazil, then I think he can leave a legacy that, you know, the country is recovering. I won't think it will have recovered by the time he leaves office.
This assumes, of course, that the political crisis does not continue when he's in office. I mean, Maria Luisa, let's talk about Operation Car Wash, which is not about cars and not about car washing at all. It's a kickback scandal involving the big oil company Petrobras. This is still going on. The conspiracy theory or not was that Dilma Rousseff is being removed from office because she threatened to uncover the whole mess. How much is that going to weigh on the proceedings when she's removed from office and afterwards too?
Yes, exactly. There are transcripts of recorded tapes showing that there was a conspiracy to get rid of Dilma because most politicians now appointed by Michel Temer are being investigated for corruption charges. Temer himself cannot run for elections for 8 years because he received illegal campaign contributions. And a third of the cabinet that he appointed of the ministries are under investigations of corruption. Eduardo Cunha, who initiated this whole process in the lower house, the impeachment process, also is now accused, and that is proved that he has illegal bank accounts in Switzerland. So you have the most corrupt politicians now in power, and the only one who is not being accused of corruption is President Dilma Rousseff.
Okay,
so I think...
But let's just establish one thing. The impeachment process is not about corruption. It's about, in essence, Enron style accounting gimmicks. Let's just agree on that. The corruption is a very serious point.
Is this a question from the? Is this a question? Or, I am going to be interrupted, or
no. Please make your point.
Who is talking?
Please make your point.
I don't understand.
That was Joel Velasco, sorry, here in the studio. You can't see him, but go on.
Okay, please don't interrupt me, please.
Okay, go on, Maria Luisa.
Yes, well, this is a fact. Dilma Rousseff is not accused of any crimes. The public prosecutor, who is the main authority in the country, has cleared her of all charges and said that the budget deficit was not her fault, and what she did was a very common financial practice that previous administrations also did, and currently at least 16 state governors are using the same type of financial mechanisms to deal with the state budget. So there is no crime. So you could have all the procedures, but if you don't have a crime, then this is a coup, and this is going to be a very dangerous precedent for democracy in Brazil.
Joel, I want to bring you in here to respond to Maria Luisa, but first of all, let's just clear it up that she's accused of sort of creative accounting. Fiscal budget laws have been manhandled, and I think she has a point that other administrations have done it too, but the laws have been strengthened. Just fill us in and give us your point of view.
Let's just be clear that the scale that she has undertaken is gigantic of these accounting gimmicks. But more importantly,
what was it for? To cover up something? To make things look better?
In essence, the government, one of the key arguments in this, and just to be clear for the audience to understand, she can only be tried for things she did during her second term in office. So everything she did.
14 months.
Correct. And so one of the cases is the state banks of Brazil were subsidizing agriculture farmers. That's a completely normal thing that's been going on. The issue is she left the bill of the subsidies, transfers from the federal government to the state bank. She never paid that. And by the way, she kept that as a revenue for the government. That's sort of the accounting issues. Now I think it's...
Sounds like the U.S. Congress.
Sure. But in Brazil, this violates the fiscal responsibility law, which is inherently what destroyed Brazil's economy and hyperinflation for many years. So, but nobody is questioning that, and I don't think most Brazilians actually think she is quite honest. Her problem is that she drove the country into the ditch, and she was in charge. And the politics of Brazil are putting her out of office. And I think we just need to accept that. I do think we're going to have a lot of other corruption scandals, and we're going to have to address those.
Rafael, I want to go to you because the defenders of Dilma Rousseff have basically said that this is a coup by an interest of a small economic elite who are worried about corruption investigations and also have a sort of economic liberalism agenda to impose austerity on Brazil. What's your take on that?
It's a rather limited view.
For me?
If you talk to people on the streets or poll, you can see that there is somewhat of a larger appeal to impeachment. But to go to Joel's last point, there is a charge of a fiscal responsibility crime against Dilma, but as he himself said, what really matters is that the country was in a massive recession, and therefore these charges were appealing to the opposition and had enough popular support and lack of support for Dilma that they could be brought forward. And that's what really matters in this process, and that's what this is really about when you talk about how impeachment is a political process. The charges are just a mere formality. Whether they are true or not really doesn't matter. What does matter is the political chessboard and how that was played out. Dilma herself was in a bad position to play chess in politics, basically because all the other actors did not like her. The other part of it is because she didn't have popular support, as I've said previously. Now, that being said, regarding car wash and an elite that is interested in removing Dilma, there certainly was a political elite, I wouldn't say economic, especially since during most of 2015, Brazil's economic elite just wanted to get on with the country's lives and end any rumor of impeachment. But there was a political elite that is interested in stopping the car wash investigation, or at least slowing it down, delimiting it where it currently stands in order to save their own skin. That being said, Dilma Rousseff was not interested in doing this at all. Hurt whoever it may end up hurting. And we can see right now there is movement inside the Brazil's Congress to delimit the penal effects of the Lava Jato investigations. There is movement, for example, certain statements that came out in the last month by Supreme Court ministers denouncing leaks the same Supreme Court ministers that were approving of leaks in the past year. So this is all part of political chessboard that it's been very well played out by the opposition, who has very well exploited the situation that Dilma Rousseff put herself in, and it's playing out successfully for them. Regarding any measures that they're going to take, some of them are going to be very unpopular, and I think Joe spoke well about this in his first answer.
Let's bring in Maria Amania in Sao Paulo. Do you think this car wash investigation into Petrobras will now go away if we see a change in the presidency? Because it really has caught the public mood. And where is anti-corruption going to be in the next administration?
Okay, but let's move a little bit before that, because I think that Dilma really committed the faults she's accused for. The issue is, the question is this sufficient for an impeachment? I think no. I think the impeachment is a very tough tool that should be used very carefully. So I don't think it was a good thing for Brazil and for Brazilian democracy to have 2 impeachments in 25 years. But anyway, democracy is there, the institutions are working, and the mere process of impeachment shows that democratic institutions are working pretty well in Brazil. On the other hand, I think that Lava Jato was one of the elements of the crisis. The other one was the issue that President Rousseff lost her capacity to coordinate her support in Congress, and Brazilian presidential system relies on the president's capacity to coordinate and to negotiate with Congress. It doesn't work when the president can do that, and that was if you add the economic crisis to the process, you see how we came to this situation. I think that at this moment there's a struggle between the agents of the justice system, the attorneys, the judges that began the Operação Lava Jato, the car wash operation, to continue, and they are in some kind of, they have been successful. For instance, some of the secretaries of President Temer had to be ousted because they have been involved in the process of Lava Jato. On the other hand, there are groups in the political elite and also, I think, in the economic elite that would like to finish this process, would like to stop with Lava Jato. And at this moment, what we are seeing is a struggle between the people that want to take Lava Jato, car wash forward, and also to approve in the Congress some measures that will make more difficult political corruption, not impossible, but more difficult. On the other hand, there are those who want to stop with this. And I think there are interests in several parties.
Okay, Maria, thank you very much. Let me bring you in Maria Luisa again. I do prefer, by the way, the words car wash in Portuguese than in English. But seriously, Maria Luisa, can I ask you where you think now the future is for the Workers' Party? Because we've had 14 years of Lula, of course, beginning a very popular movement. We've got Dilma Rousseff now. But the impeachment, he, of course, faced corruption charges. There's all that controversy about when Dilma made him chief of staff. Where does that party go from now?
Yes, I think that there is a lot of confusion. Your guests don't understand the difference between a parliamentary system and a presidential system. In a democracy, if you don't abide by the rules, if you say the rules don't matter, then you're not in a democracy anymore. We are not a parliamentary system. You cannot impeach a president because you don't like her. Well, so that's very dangerous. That's very dangerous.
You made that point before, but what about the future?
Exactly, and Well, what I'm saying now is that the new policy, which is cut investments in education, in healthcare, in housing, cut investments, this is going to take the country to a more serious economic crisis. It's not going to improve the economy. And we're going to be in a limbo. We're going to be in a limbo politically because we don't know what the rules are. We're going to impeach someone in spite of the fact that she didn't commit any crime, so I don't like you, I'm going to get rid of you. That's the rule of the law now in Brazil. So we're going to have economic instability, political instability, and all the institutions now are going to be at risk because we're going to have the most corrupt politicians in charge now.
I'm glad you brought out the future and what you think the economic outcomes of all this is. Joel, here in the studio, what do you think the geopolitical outcomes of this are going to be, considering what Maria Luisa just said?
Well, Brazil can't continue to spend what it doesn't have. And so not invested in education is because Brazil doesn't have the money. And as what Brazil is doing in terms of its external policy and broadly is realigning itself with doing with it what it has, right? It's spending the money it has and not trying to dream of, for instance, they're cutting embassies. There's no need now to have an embassy at every country in Africa because Brazil can't afford it. And Brazil's going to have to invest at home with its people, with the money it has. That is going to mean
austerity hasn't always worked in the post-financial crisis. Sure. Some successes, some failures, but investment or Keynesian approach, as some economists, like in the US or China, actually did seem to work. So it depends on what sort of economy you're talking about, right?
Well, it works sometimes, and President Rousseff, some of the spending and some of the issues that have triggered the impeachment process have to do with her anti-cyclical spending over the last several years, including those of President Lula. We sort of created this snowball scenario in Brazil. I think the country is certainly weaker today. The people are fed up, and after 9 months, they're not even going to the streets to protest whether they believe this is a parliamentary coup or they think this is just a political conspiracy. What we see is a country that wants to move on, that wants to put bread on the table, kids in school, and make sure that they've got enough health care to protect themselves from things like Zika.
What will help at the G20 in Hangzhou for Brazil? Because remember, it's a very inclusive summit, this one. Brazil obviously are going to be part of it, but other developing countries that are facing similar crises in terms of low commodity prices, low amounts of capital investment, FDI, etc.
I mean, we're obviously going to be looking for, commitments for additional investment and so forth. But I think the most important thing you will see is Brazil taking a posture of, listen, we're not trying to fix the world. We're not trying to be involved in all kinds of issues. What we want is to focus on our own country. We want some respect, and we actually want your businesses, whether it's companies from China, from the US, and others, to invest in Brazil. That may not make a lot of people happy in Brazil and the left, but it certainly, I would think, make most heads of state in China happy.
Well, let's see about that. Joel, thank you very much here in the DC studio. Also, thanks to our guests in Berkeley, California, Sao Paulo, and Rio de Janeiro. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for this edition of The Heat, but the conversation does continue online. Join us on CCTV's America's Facebook page to comment on this or any other show, or chat with us on Twitter at CCTV_America. I'm Nathan King in Washington, DC, and thanks so much for being with us.